Hello, friends. It is clear today that we are living through a time of extraordinary crisis. Not only the pandemic, but here in the Twin Cities, also the pandemic of racism that has caused yet another death of a black man killed by a white police officer the other night, and now violence rising from the protests of that killing. And as I've been thinking about this moment of crisis, I was thinking about a friend of ours who this morning told us she and her housemate, who live near where George Floyd was killed and near many of the protests that broke out along Lake Street in Minneapolis, she said she and her housemate slept in shifts last night so that each one could be aware if there would be a need to evacuate on a moment's notice. And they packed bags for themselves and for their pets so that they could leave immediately if they needed to, if the fires came near to their building. And it made me recall all the other people I have known who have packed bags like this in preparation for sudden action or departure. People I've known who have been in abusive relationships who needed to pack a bag and keep it handy in case their abuser suddenly got so violent they had to leave immediately. People who have lived in cities that have been devastated by numerous tornadoes who have said that you should always sleep with your shoes on so that if you wake in the middle of the night to a tornado, you can leave and not cut your feet on the glass that's broken. Or the people in Mexico City who are so accustomed to earthquakes, they have earthquake bags that they have packed and ready to go if they need to evacuate. And I ask myself, what are we being asked to pack and prepare for this moment of crisis right here in our own town, in our own city, our own homes? And what came to me was, it's our spiritual practices we need now. They take no room in a bag and they carry no weight, but they are extremely important. And if you think for a moment that this might be the time to skip them, I ask you to think again. In my experience, what spiritual practices do is they create spaciousness for us. They create spaciousness of heart and mind, and they create spaciousness in our lives so that we have more choices about how we respond to things. My therapist likes to say that when I find myself in times of chaos and rising tension, that I should look for any way to create more space, because she says, if you make more space, there will be less pressure. The chaos will become dispersed enough that it need not explode. So many people are calling our circumstances right now a powder keg. We need more space to keep it from exploding so that we can truly see one another in this moment without jumping to conclusions, without rushing in to knee-jerk reactions to anything, to make more space in our heart for the wholeness of this situation, which is not the same thing as saying sitting still. This kind of spaciousness is actually a call to action, but it is asking us each to pause for a moment and consider what that action might be. Or as one meditation teacher has put it, to ask ourselves, what is the next right step? One step at a time. Pema Chodron, the Buddhist monk and teacher, once was talking about the gifts of pausing, which is the gift of spiritual practice. Pausing, she said, creates a momentary contrast between being completely self-absorbed and being awake and present. You just stop for a few seconds, she said, breathe deeply, and move on. I am mindful that for many of us, our spiritual practices call us to be centered on our breath. And in my own practices, I've been aware that this is the very thing that was denied to George Floyd as he was pinned beneath the knee of the white police officer, saying, "I can't breathe." For each of us today, hearing his words echo in our own memory, I ask you to dedicate your breath, your intention toward correcting the injustices that led to George Floyd's death. Can we devote our spiritual practices to creating a pause so that we can notice and then follow what is our right's next step? It will be different for each of us, but the pausing is similar. Paying attention to this moment, paying attention to our heart's truth, and to what we have to bring to this moment. I want to close by sharing with you a passage from a book by Muriel Rukeyser, an American author or American poet who found herself in Barcelona in 1936, just prior to the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War. And as the city of Barcelona broke out into all kinds of violence, she and other Americans were rounded up on the central square and told to go home and give witness to what they had seen. And as she wrote about this later in a powerful book called The Life of Poetry, she says this: "In time of crisis, we summon up our strength. Then, if we are lucky, we are able to call every resource, every forgotten image that can leap to our quickening, every memory that can make us know our power. And this luck is more than it seems to be. It depends on the long preparation of the self to be used. In time of crisis of the spirit," she says, "we are aware of all our need for each other and our need for ourselves. We call up with all the strength of summoning we have our fullness, and then we turn, for it is a turning that we have prepared, and act." I ask you, friends, to be diligent in your spiritual practices right now, in preparing yourself to be used by this moment in whatever you learn you are being asked to do. And to not let our call to safe social distancing be a call to distancing ourselves from the suffering of others. Be diligent in your practices. Pause and take note, and then take the next right step. The future is depending on all of us this way.